Consumer software startups peaked in 2013 with companies like LinkedIn and Facebook and Uber and Snap. And then in 2014, crickets. Nothing. There's been almost nothing built in consumer for 11 years. Let's talk through why that is, and let's talk through how AI changes the game, because things have really changed in the last year. So consumer was over for about 11 years. Building anything in consumer software was almost impossible. The window had closed 90%, the tech window had closed. So in 1993, consumers didn't use software. But in 1994, we got the browser, and that's when we kicked off the consumer era that we all have lived through and have really enjoyed, whether it be eBay and Amazon and Facebook and Google and Uber and all these great companies that now help us run our lives. That was all between 94 and 2013. But then by 2013, we got almost nothing for the next 11 years. Consumer was over. So what had happened? So Facebook and LinkedIn were dominating their channels. You had to spend to get distribution. The needs of consumers were largely met. The interface of the laptop or the desktop with a mouse hadn't changed in 30 years. The mobile phone stopped changing after about 2008. I mean, the iPhone 3 looks pretty much like the iPhone 18. Nothing has really changed. And so there was no opportunity, no technology window disruption that would allow for a breakout new consumer company during 2014 to 2023. So as an investor, meeting startup founders trying to start a consumer company, I'd look at it, will it actually work? And time again, I said, this isn't gonna work. So consumer software went through the same technology window cycle that every technology goes through. At the beginning, you get the hobbyists who are just playing around with the browser or with an eBay, but then there's a status moment, like when Mark Andreessen suddenly becomes a billionaire at age 24 and everybody wants to know, how did he get that? So they start looking into it, and that means that the knowledge diffuses. So knowledge diffusion takes place, and then once people learn about what this internet thing is and what consumer internet is and how people are using it on their laptops and on their desktops, everyone jumps in, you get competition. And once you get this competition, then the next phase is that the incumbents arrive, either because they have network effects or because their management teams are better or because they get a bigger brand. They get defensibilities in place and they become the incumbents for this technology window, in this case, consumer software, and then they shut the door. It just becomes nearly impossible. 90% the window is closed. Do some things get through? Sure. Between 2014, we got Discord and we got TikTok and we got Starlink and we got ChatGPT. And then we got a few mobile games companies, a few consumer fintech companies, but literally it's somewhere between 10 and 15 unicorns were birthed during an 11-year period, where in the prior 20 years, each year had birthed perhaps 15 or 20 unicorns. So in 2025, the consumer window has finally reopened because of AI, plain and simple. This new consumer wave is not just a revival of what was old, it's actually a revolution, because whole new ways of thinking about how to interact with consumers and how they interact with each other and how they interact with agents is now upon us. It's a whole new way of thinking. So we're not just going to dredge up what we did 20 years ago when it was working. We actually have to have new mental models, new mindsets based on the new technology. That's why these are called technology windows, right? New examples for behavior are the fact that AI can go and gather a lot of information, summarize it, and present it to them so that the consumer doesn't have to do that work. Another behavior is that consumers can interact with voice. Another behavior is that consumers can interact with agents or with bots that didn't exist before. And we're just beginning to see how that's going to look, what those interfaces are, what those experiences are. That's why it's so exciting. It's late in the game. The incumbents are already in place. Everyone's got access to the same AI you do. So you're going to have to be excellent in order to make waves in consumer internet. It's a little bit like Los Angeles. If you were there in the 50s and the 60s, you could be okay and you'd still do really well. But by the time the 90s and the 2000s rolled around, you had to be better than Tom Cruise, which just doesn't happen. The environment had already closed off, and the same thing is true today. It's just that AI gives you a lever, but you still have to be excellent at everything you do in consumer in order to make any waves. So be prepared. So here are some of the things. Number one, you've got to be good at AI. You've got to know what's going on with AI and be on the very cutting edge and be evolving. constantly moving, constantly checking out new AI models, constantly checking out new interfaces using AI as we move into that space. You have to be flexible. You don't have the answer. You have the process for finding the answer for this month. It's a different mindset. Second thing is you've got to be world-class in design, in marketing, in positioning, in growth, okay? You've got to be world-class. Third thing, you've got to study history. A lot of things have been tried before, and there's psychological and distribution reasons why they haven't happened, and you need to know what those are so you can angle around them. Fourth thing, speed, okay? It's always important in software startups. It's critical in consumer. As soon as you get any traction, you'll have 6 venture-backed competitors, and the incumbents will want to come take it. Speed is essential. Design your product to start quickly and accelerate from there. The fifth thing is you've got to master growth. You've got to be good at A/B testing. You've got to be good at iterating. You have to be excellent at growth. It needs to be in your DNA, changing how you grow every week, every month, every quarter. It's not something you fix and then you grow. It's something you do all the time. Number 6, you've got to focus on network effects. If you don't have a network effect, that incumbent will come and take your market once they see what you're doing, or another startup that might be better funded or have another advantage will come in and take your market. You've got to build network effects from the very beginning, or you're going to get displaced. And then 7, you've got to be in person, in the same office, so that you can move quickly. You're going to make 4 critical decisions between breakfast and lunch. And if you're not in person, looking at each other, whiteboarding, agreeing with each other, doing it together, A/B testing together, going through all of your different failures and getting back on your feet, you will not be fast enough. You will not be precise enough. You will not be good enough. And I know you don't want to hear that. And you believe, oh, I get better talent remote. You got all these excuses for why everyone can just stay at home and relax. You can't. You've got to be in the war room, moving at speed together in the same room. And that's how we see consumer businesses get big and how they win. We've got plenty of founders who've come to us and said, James, you kept telling me this for years, and now I finally moved everyone together. It's night and day. I can't believe it. I hope all my competitors stay remote. And they're absolutely right. You don't want to be roadkill because you weren't willing to play the real game, which is move your ass together, work in the same room. And look, winning today in consumer software is like winning in Hollywood. Only the 0.1% make it. And in fact, it's a little bit similar because when you have an app that is consumer-oriented and you have tens of millions, hundreds of millions of users, everyone's going to end up knowing your name. So you actually become part of the framework of how people move their lives, and you become important. And it's only the top 1% of people who can manage that. And that's where it is today. In 94, it was much easier, but it ain't 94. It's 30 years ago, guys. That Social Network movie that you watched, that was published in 2010, and it was a story from 2004. That was 20 years ago. The world doesn't work that way anymore. But consumer takes a particular type of magic, a particular type of attention to detail, iterating on the A/B testing, iterating on the growth channels, iterating on the messaging and the product features. That magic, that skill, that art, if you will, is very rare among people, and that's what's required to succeed here. My partners and I have built 10 companies that got to be worth over $10 billion cumulatively, almost all in consumer. And we know what excellence requires to make these consumer things work. There are some formulas, but in a brand new world of AI, they've got to be adapted for what's going on now. But bringing yourself up to that level and giving yourself a chance in consumer is a real work, and you need to be sure that you're up for it.